A Boeing 737 plane, full with 127 people, gets stuck in a storm and suddenly starts to fall. Amidst people's screams, the pilot tries hard to control the plane, but it doesn't come under their command. The question arises, why did this tragedy happen? And did anyone survive? This is the story of Bhoja Air Flight 213, a plane crash with not just one but many reasons behind it. In today's video, we will tell you about this incident. But before starting the video, we request you to subscribe to our channel. Making content like this takes a lot of time and effort, and your subscription encourages us to continue doing this work. So, let's start the video now. That evening of April 20th, 2012, 121 passengers and 6 crew members boarded a plane at Jinnah International Airport in Pakistan. Bhoja Air's Flight 213 was supposed to reach Benazir Bhutto International Airport in Islamabad from Karachi. This was the airline's first evening flight in the last 12 years. It was a short 2-hour flight, and the plane was fully occupied from the cockpit to the back passenger seats. The Boeing 737-236A aircraft was used in this flight, which was an advanced version of the Boeing 737-200 series. This also became a significant reason for the incident because both pilots of this flight had not received any training to fly this plane. Additionally, the weather in Islamabad was quite bad that day, and the pilots had no experience flying a plane in such conditions. Actually, the command of this plane was in the hands of 58-year-old Captain Nurullah Khan Afridi, who had been a former Air Force pilot. He had more than 10,000 hours of flying experience. The responsibility of the co-pilot in the flight rested on the shoulders of 53-year-old Javed Malik, who was less experienced compared to Captain Afridi. However, like Captain Afridi, he had also served in the Pakistani Air Force before becoming a commercial pilot, and had a total of 2,832 hours of flying experience. It's remarkable that after becoming a commercial pilot, he gained all his experience alongside Captain Afridi. Their friendship was so strong that Javed Malik left his previous airline and joined Bhoja Air, just to work with Captain Afridi. Both of these pilots had decent experience flying Boeing 737-200 planes. However, they had only flown the advanced aircraft of this series, the 737-236A, for just 82 hours. Not only that, but Captain Afridi's previous airline, Spainair International, had also attempted to train him for the advanced series of Boeing aircraft. However, during the training, his supervisor stopped it midway, stating, "Captain Afridi, you cannot effectively and safely operate the automated flight deck." Nevertheless, Bhoja Air appointed him as the captain of the Boeing 737-236A aircraft. The 121 passengers on the plane had no clue that the pilot flying them from Karachi to Islamabad had limited knowledge of the plane's functionality. Around 5 p.m., after completing all the formalities, the process of pushing the plane back towards the runway begins. Within 10 minutes, the plane takes off from the runway. The first hour of the flight passes very smoothly, and there are no issues or difficulties felt on the plane. Passengers are enjoying the short journey and the sunset visible from the plane. However, they have no idea about what is going to happen in the next hour. Not only the pilot but the entire plane should not have been part of this flight. Actually, according to Pakistan's Civil Aviation Authority (CA), Bhoja Air did not have any advanced version of the Boeing 737-200. The records indicated that Bhoja Air only had base models of the Boeing 737. Moreover, the pilot training program at Bhoja Air was designed only for the base models of the Boeing 737. Additionally, the CIA had not granted airworthiness certification to the 737-236 aircraft. Despite all this, the CIA had given Bhoja Air permission to fly and carry passengers in this plane. This indicates that the airline was deeply involved in corruption, with even CIA officials being implicated in the matter. The cost of their corruption was paid by 121 innocent lives who lost their lives. As we said earlier, the first hour of the flight passes very smoothly. At 6:10 p.m., when the plane begins to approach its destination, the pilot first sees the storm, for which a warning had been given to them at the beginning. It was a significant storm with thunderous clouds, lightning, strong winds, and heavy rain. Despite this, the pilot takes the storm lightly and informs passengers through flight attendants that there might be some turbulence due to the storm, so there is no need to worry. Both pilots sing songs and joke with each other as they continue to advance the plane. After getting close to the storm and checking the weather radar information, they realize for the first time that the storm is indeed very intense, and they may need to land at an alternate airport. They might need to consider landing at an alternate airport in this situation, and they had two options, Lahore and Peshawar. However, since there was a warning for mild turbulence in Lahore, Peshawar seemed to be the safest option. First Officer Javed Malik suggests heading towards Peshawar, but Captain Afridi dismisses the suggestion, saying, "Don't worry, God will help us reach Islamabad safely." With these words, they continue guiding the plane towards its destination, Islamabad. Javed Malik considered Captain Afridi his mentor, so he couldn't question his decisions under any circumstances. Relying on God, the flight continues towards the storm in Islamabad. Seeing the storm ahead, the pilot considers the idea of landing on the runway from the opposite direction on the other side of the airport. With this thought, they contact the ATC and inquire whether they can approach the airport from the west direction since they don't see any gap in the storm. ATC responds that there is no gap from the west, but there is a small and narrowing gap to the southwest. However, the pilot was warned not to fly within a 5-mile range of a storm. Despite the small size of the gap, they decide to take the risk and proceed southwest. Facing a significant danger, the cockpit atmosphere remains calm, and both pilots continue to share light-hearted banter as they advance the plane. As the plane descends, the turbulence increases, and the storm becomes more perilous. The cockpit is filled with lightning flashes, and the turbulence in the plane intensifies as it descends further. Despite the weather radar indicating that the center of the storm was 14 miles away, the plane and the runway were only 15 miles apart at this point. It means the plane had to pass through the center of the storm to reach the runway. The first officer points the captain towards this warning, hoping that maybe the captain would turn the plane towards Peshawar after seeing the weather radar. But Captain Afridi doesn't consider such a thought, and he continues taking the plane towards the southwest. Now, at this point, rainwater begins to hit the plane's windshield. Meanwhile, the gap in the storm they were heading towards starts closing rapidly. Despite all this, the captain initiates the landing process by aligning the plane towards the runway, utilizing autopilot to maintain the course amid heavy turbulence. Simultaneously, the first officer lowers the flaps and extends the landing gear. Upon lowering the landing gear, the plane suddenly encounters a strong headwind gust, causing a turbulent impact. The plane's airspeed increases from 190 to 220 knots due to the sudden headwind gust. The captain is completely surprised, unable to believe how the advanced aircraft's autothrottle could allow such a rapid speed increase. Captain suspects a malfunction in the plane's autothrottle system, thinking it has caused the speed to increase unexpectedly. Indeed, the reality was that the plane's speed wasn't increased from within, rather, the outside air's velocity had intensified. It appears that both pilots were completely confused in this situation. However, how did the outside air suddenly become so intense? The answer to this was a microburst. In reality, a microburst refers to the air that descends from clouds during a storm and, upon reaching the ground, spreads rapidly in all directions. The gust of wind that Flight 213 encountered was caused by this microburst. Because the plane was heading towards a microburst at this time. However, the pilots had no idea about all this because the plane was surrounded by thick clouds, and there was no instrument inside indicating information about the microburst. All they knew was that the plane's speed had increased significantly beyond the required limit. In this situation, the pilot should have reduced the engine power manually to decrease the speed. However, they chose to let the autopilot handle it. They set the autopilot's target speed to 170 knots. Gradually, the autopilot reduces engine power, bringing the speed down to 170 knots, and everything returns to normal. The challenges had just begun, as the air from the microburst hits the plane from 3 different directions. The problem was that neither of the pilots had any idea how to navigate through this situation, as they were never trained for it. Navigating through the headwind, the aircraft soon faces another attack from the microburst, this time in the form of a downdraft. In this, a powerful gust of air forcefully pushes the plane downward from above, creating a sudden and rapid descent as the aircraft falls into the grip of the downdraft, leaving the pilots utterly surprised and distressed. The autopilot tries to pitch the nose upward to keep the plane up, but it proves ineffective in countering the downdraft. The powerful air causes the plane to rapidly descend thousands of feet within seconds, triggering the wind shear alarm on the plane. As everyone on the plane, including the pilots and passengers, began to scream. With the cessation of the downdraft, the plane abruptly stops descending, relieving the passengers' fear of an imminent crash. Even though the plane's altitude is only 900 feet, which is insufficient to achieve the glide slope. Here, the autopilot disconnects, and the captain takes control of the plane. But one thing still remains out of their control, and that's the engine. In fact, the auto throttle of the plane was still connected and attempting to maintain the aircraft's speed at 170 knots. But the captain and co-pilot were unaware of this fact. They thought the auto throttle could adjust the plane's speed according to the need, but that was not the case. The auto throttle's job is to maintain the plane at a specific predetermined speed, not to adjust it on its own. Neither of the pilots had such basic information. Facing a tailwind attack from the airflow coming from behind is indeed the next and most dangerous challenge after passing through the microburst. As soon as the plane collides with a strong tailwind, its speed suddenly drops from 170 knots to 140 knots, and the aircraft begins to lose its stability. Now, the simple solution to escape this situation was for the pilot to push the plane's engines to full power, but instead, they relied on the auto throttle. And in the midst of confusion, they push the nose down to stabilize the plane. This slightly increases the plane's speed, and it regains stability. However, along with this, the plane rapidly starts losing its altitude. The runway was still quite far, and the plane had come very close to the ground. During this time, the plane's ground proximity warning alarm starts sounding, indicating the need for the plane to climb.
Pull up!
In this critical situation, one of the pilots should have, in the true sense, raised the nose of the plane and given full power to its engines. However, neither of the pilots entertains the thought of doing this. They remain confused, wondering why the plane's speed is not increasing. With every passing second, the plane's speed and altitude continue to decrease. Suddenly, the plane's speed starts to increase, and for a moment, the pilots breathe a sigh of relief. They think the problem might be resolved, but it turns out not to be the case. Actually, the plane had emerged from the microburst and was now out of the tailwind, causing the auto throttle to continue maintaining it at 170 knots. As the pilots were pleased with the change in speed, they had no idea that they were about to face another, even stronger microburst ahead. Like the previous microburst, the plane encounters headwind first, causing a sudden increase in the aircraft's airspeed. To maintain the speed at 170 knots, the auto throttle reduces engine power. Just like the previous encounter with the headwind, the plane faces a powerful downdraft, causing a rapid loss of altitude. With this, the ground proximity warning alarm sounds once again in the cockpit.
Pull up.
At the sound of this alarm, the pilots, in a state of panic, immediately raise the nose of the plane. However, the surprising part was that they don't touch the lever to increase engine power. It appears that the captain had overestimated the capabilities of the auto throttle system. It seems the captain was expecting the auto throttle to provide power according to the need, but in reality, it was attempting to maintain the plane at the specified speed of 170 knots. The plane struggled to gain enough speed to recover from the effects of the microburst, and then the subsequent encounter with tailwind posed another challenge. As the speed decreased, the plane started to descend rapidly. In order to stabilize the plane, the pilot was compelled to once again lower its nose. This provides the plane with the necessary speed it is urgently needed. However, as the speed increases, the auto throttle starts reducing engine power to keep the plane at 170 knots. This provides the plane with the necessary speed it is urgently needed. However, as the speed increases, the auto throttle starts reducing engine power to keep the plane at 170 knots. But by raising the nose, the plane loses its speed and uncontrollably starts descending. To stop this free fall, the pilot lowers the nose again, but as they do, the ground proximity warning alarm starts sounding.
Pull up.
During this struggle, the plane's altitude keeps decreasing. Surprisingly, the lever that could be pushed forward to get out of this situation, the one that the pilot doesn't even touch, never crosses their mind to disconnect the auto throttle and manually power the engines even once. With co-pilot Javed Malik shouting, they try to abort the landing and instruct the plane to take off again, but by then, it's too late. The plane has completely lost its altitude, and it crashes in a small village called Hassanabad, approximately 7.85 kilometers before the runway in Rawalpindi.
Pull up. Pull up. Pull up.
As the plane collides with the ground, a massive explosion occurs, scattering the wreckage up to 2 kilometers away. All 127 people on board lost their lives at the crash site. The investigation reveals that multiple factors, not just one, contributed to the crash. The absence of proper training, lack of experience flying in storms, the captain downplaying the severity of the situation, or ignoring the co-pilot's input. All these factors contributed to the incident. Among these, what was the most important reason for this crash? Decide for yourself and let us know by commenting. This is it for today. See you soon with another case study. Till then, goodbye and take care.